Thank you everyone for 1,000 subscribers. I'm not gonna waste your time with a thank you speech. I'm just gonna quickly drop a disclaimer. This isn't a narration of the actual Punic War. It's a somewhat alternate history version that begins with the real war using the map and cities that are in the Rome 1 mod called Barbarian Empires. I'll leave a link to it in the description. The year is 264 BC. Rome has taken over Messana after a request by the Mamertines for aid from both Carthage and Rome. This ignited a war between the two powers over control of the island of Sicily, which would see the involvement of the Greek city-state of Syracuse in this long and grueling war to come. Carthage was not prepared for the war and needed some time to mobilize its forces, while Rome, who had the intention of fully conquering the island beforehand, had its forces already mobilized and ready to pounce. Rome's first target was to take over the neutral cities between them and the Carthaginian territories. The Roman army demanded that Mylae join their side, but the city insisted on neutrality, which wasn't enough for the Romans, and so they stormed and sacked the city. Fearing a similar fate, the inhabitants of Tyndaris decided to join the Roman side. After resupplying in Tyndaris, the Roman army advanced towards Halleisa, putting it under siege. Carthage had already sent messengers to Syracuse to convince them to join the war against Rome, and by arguing that Roman expansionism won't stop until the whole island is under Rome's control, the Syracusans agreed to join forces to stop the Roman menace. And by the time Rome reached Halleisa, Syracuse had mobilized and sent an army to attack, which quickly reached the gates of Messana. The Romans were forced to abandon the siege and go stop the Greek attack. The Syracusan army was small in comparison, as it was mostly a diversion force, and so the Romans dispatched it with ease. However, this gave the Carthaginians enough time for their army to reach the front line. They eventually met the Roman army outside Tyndaris, which they outnumbered 1.5 to 1. In their bid to end the war quickly, they arranged their forces in a way to prevent the Romans from escaping the battlefield. This, however, backfired, and their formation collapsed under Roman pressure, and they were dealt a heavy loss, retreating deep into western Sicily. The Romans decided it would be better to neutralize Syracuse first, and so they marched south, taking over both Naxos and Catane, something which Syracuse wasn't prepared for, as they thought the Carthaginian army would destroy the smaller Roman army. Syracuse quickly raised an army and sent it to stop the Romans. They met outside Leontini. The Romans won yet again, although it was a Pyrrhic victory, and they had to retreat and wait for reinforcements. The Romans recently tried wresting control of the seas from Carthage, but failed to do so when they lost a naval engagement near Messana, which meant no more reinforcements could be sent to that army until the way was cleared for the navy to deliver the help needed. Since then, the Romans had gathered another fleet and engaged the Carthaginians near Mylae. The Carthaginian admiral was feeling overconfident from his last victory against the Romans, and thus he underestimated his foes, which not only resulted in a defeat, but also his entire fleet being destroyed. With this victory, the Romans were now able to land reinforcements and supplies. They left a small force to garrison Tyndaris, while the main army went on the attack against Syracuse once more. Syracuse had successfully regained Catane, but when news reached them of the impending Roman attack, they decided to pull back and stay within the safety of their strong walls in Syracuse. The Romans marched unopposed, retaking Catane, besieging and eventually taking over Leontini too, and finally attacking Syracuse itself. Although the Roman army was strong, the Syracusan walls were stronger, and a prolonged siege was the only option available to the Romans. Their intention was to starve out a Syracusan surrender, and subsequently turning the city-state into a vassal to aid them in the war against Carthage. Carthage sent a small force to subjugate the last neutral town in the island, Enna, which it successfully did, while another force was sent east. Their strategy wasn't to take over Roman cities, but rather stall out enemy forces in the island and also prevent them from defeating their Greek allies in the southeast, until they regained firm and undisputed control of the sea, and then after that they would slowly whittle out any Roman forces left in the island. They besieged Tyndaris once again, hoping to bait the Romans out of their siege of Syracuse, but the problem was Tyndaris kept receiving supplies by Roman ships. The Carthaginians had already prepared another large fleet which made its way to Tyndaris, enforcing a naval blockade. The Romans quickly rerouted their fleet from blockading Syracuse and took it to engage the Carthaginian fleet near Tyndaris. The two fleets met between Tyndaris and Mylae. The Carthaginians had superiority in both numbers and experience, and so they inflicted heavy losses on the Romans, forcing them to make a hasty retreat. This loss meant that the Romans had to abandon the siege of Syracuse or risk losing it all on the island. Just as the Roman army came close to Tyndaris, the Carthaginians pulled a tactical retreat. The Romans chased them down to Halaisa. The Carthaginian army garrisoned the city, which came under siege by the Romans. Just like the Carthaginians in Tyndaris before them, the Romans now also faced the problem of Halaisa being supplied by sea. But the Romans had no other option, as they had an opportunity to wipe out the enemy army if this siege succeeded. However, after a while, the second Carthaginian force arrived, forcing the Romans to retreat or risk being encircled. Rome commissioned the building of a very large fleet to wrestle back control of the sea. Meanwhile, a rebellion broke out in Leontini and Catane, instigated by Syracuse, which led to the cities falling back in Greek hands. The Roman general left a portion of his forces at Tyndaris and went to regain the lost cities. He regained Catane and met the Greek army near Leontini. This time the numbers favored the Greeks. The Roman infantry proved superior to the Syracusans, but the Greeks learned a few lessons from their last encounters and defeated the Romans with superior tactics. At this point, the only Roman hope was their newly created navy, which would soon arrive at the island. Things got worse when Carthage attacked. The Romans couldn't afford a siege, so they met them near Tyndaris with everything they had. The battle was ferocious. The Carthaginians once again found themselves unable to efficiently deal with the Roman legions, but their superior numbers ensured them a Pyrrhic victory. And after taking over Tyndaris, they were spent and had to replenish their ranks before continuing. The Greeks also took back Naxos, but the Carthaginian condition for them was to not take over any land that wasn't theirs, and so they didn't advance any further. The Romans managed to sneak in some reinforcements into the island when they successfully evaded enemy patrols. They also brought in a newly elected consul to take over command. He went on the offensive. His army reached Tyndaris and besieged it. After a while, he managed to bribe someone from the garrison to open the gates, and his men flooded in and captured the town. He then advanced towards Halaisa. This time he bribed the garrison leader with money and promises of safety if he gave up the town, which he did, and the consul kept his word and let the garrison escape to Thermae. But the Carthaginian leadership wasn't happy with what he did, which they viewed as treachery, and executed him for it. He continued west to Thermae, but the Carthaginian reinforcements arrived, and he had to pull back to gather more forces to raise his odds of beating a numerically superior force. He couldn't muster up enough men before the enemy reached the outskirts of Halaisa, so once again Tyndaris became the front line. Meanwhile, a civil war had been raging in Syracusan territories between a faction wanting to stay on the Carthaginian side and another wanting to join the Roman side. Carthage advanced further east. The Roman consul decided he had enough men to face them head-on, but he soon discovered that local militias and mercenaries aren't as effective as the Roman infantry, of which he didn't have enough due to a lack of reinforcements from mainland Roman regions. The result was a sound defeat for the Romans. The consul took whatever men he had left and escaped to Tyndaris, where he had no choice but to make a last stand on the island. News of this defeat spread in Syracusan lands, leading to a drastic decline in support for the pro-Roman faction and eventually a victory for the pro-Carthaginian faction in the war. Things were going horribly for Rome, and it looked like they were on the brink of total defeat. However, the massive fleet they have been building for years had finally been completed and was on its way to destroy the Carthaginian fleet and open the way for the armies they have on mainland Italy to move to the island. Carthage knew about this fleet, and in response they had already sent a second fleet to aid the one blockading Tyndaris in the upcoming naval battle. The two fleets met somewhere between Tyndaris and Halaisa in the biggest naval battle in history, one that would determine the fate of Rome in this war. Will the Roman numerical superiority triumph over Carthaginian experience and long naval traditions, or will the Carthaginians be able to seal Rome's fate on the island once and for all? Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, slap a like on it and subscribe to see part 2 of this story, or for more Total War related stuff. If you have any ideas you want me to do, leave them down below in a comment and I'll consider doing them. See you next video.